Texas floods, unregulated development, and the root causes of disaster. Here's a shocking truth. Texas's devastating floods, which claimed over 130 lives during the 4th of July weekend, weren't just a tragedy of nature. They were a failure of policy. But here's where it gets controversial. Experts argue that the state's refusal to address unregulated development in flood-prone areas is the root cause of this destruction. While lawmakers scramble to respond during the special legislative session, they're focusing on symptoms, like weather alerts and emergency systems, rather than the systemic issue at hand. Let's break it down. Many of the victims were living in vulnerable structures like RVs and mobile homes, often located in government-designated floodways or floodplains. An analysis by Hearst newspapers revealed that these areas, particularly in Travis, Williamson, and Burnett counties, were ticking time bombs. Yet, during a nearly 12-hour hearing on July 23rd, legislators fixated on short-term fixes instead of asking the hard question, why are so many Texans living in harm's way? Andrew Rumbach, a senior researcher at the Urban Institute, puts it bluntly. Land use has to be a major part of the solution here. And this is the part most people miss. Texas's 2024 state flood plan found that 17% of Texans, about 5.2 million people, live or work in known flood hazard areas. Many of these areas fall outside city limits, where county governments lack zoning authority and struggle to enforce building standards. It's a recipe for disaster, and it's been simmering for years. Jim Blackburn, a Rice University professor specializing in environmental law, calls the state's approach to floodplain development negligence. He argues that Texas has never given this issue the attention it deserves. Take the recent floods in central Texas, which destroyed homes and claimed at least 18 lives in the Austin area. In Travis County alone, damages exceeded $25 million. FEMA flood maps show that many of the worst-hit neighborhoods were in high-risk zones, yet development continued unchecked. Here's the kicker. FEMA's flood maps, while crucial, aren't foolproof. They're updated only every 5 years, during which flood risks can shift dramatically due to climate change and new developments. Rumbach warns many more people are at risk than realize it today. So, what's the solution? Modernizing flood maps and rethinking land use policies are critical first steps. But here's the controversial part. Cheap land in floodplains attracts lower-income residents and developers, often leading to mobile home parks and RV resorts in high-risk areas. These properties are hard to relocate, leaving residents dangerously exposed. Recreational areas, like campsites, often face fewer restrictions, making them hidden danger zones. Rumbach notes, this is a really underappreciated area of risk. Texas counties, unlike cities, lack the power to regulate land use through zoning, leaving them powerless to restrict development in flood-prone areas. State law also prevents counties from collecting drainage fees in unincorporated areas, hindering flood mitigation efforts. Nearly every flood planning region in Texas has pleaded with the legislature to address these gaps, but progress has been slow. So what's next? Lawmakers have vowed to prevent future disasters, but history isn't on their side. After Hurricane Harvey, key recommendations were left unfulfilled, despite a $1 billion annual allocation for water infrastructure. Blackburn warns that turning the tide on land use regulations could take years, but he's adamant. We will continue to destroy houses and potentially kill people in the floodplain until we get more serious about it. Here's the question for you. Is Texas doing enough to protect its residents from flood risks? Or is unregulated development a ticking time bomb? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's spark a conversation that could save lives. Kerr County official admits to being asleep during deadly flooding. Imagine waking up to the devastating news that your loved ones are missing or have perished in a catastrophic flood, and the person responsible for emergency management in your county was asleep during the crisis. This is exactly what happened in Kerr County, Texas, where a deadly flooding event claimed the lives of over 100 people, including 37 children. The county's emergency management director, William Dub Thomas, recently revealed that he was sick and asleep as the water rose to historic levels on the Guadalupe River. But here's where it gets even more alarming. Thomas claimed that he had no indication of the pending disaster, despite being the lead official responsible for emergency management in the county. As the story unfolds, it becomes clear that a series of unfortunate events and communication breakdowns led to one of the most tragic flooding events in recent history. Thomas explained that he had worked a full day on July 2nd and went home sick, with no concerns raised about an elevated weather condition beyond what is typical for the region during the summer. He stayed homesick on July 3rd and did not participate in 2 meetings dealing with the Texas Emergency Management Coordination Center. His supervisors, including the Kerr County Sheriff, were aware that he was out sick. Thomas briefly woke up around 2 p.m. on July 3rd, but there was no rainfall at the time and no indication of the pending change in the river. He went back to sleep, only to be awakened around 5:30 a.m. on July 4th by his wife, following a call from the city of Kerrville's emergency management coordinator, Jeremy Hughes, requesting that he mobilize. This was the first time Thomas realized that an emergency was unfolding. By approximately 6 a.m., he was coordinating the county's response in close contact with the sheriff, the Emergency Operations Center, and Hughes, working together under rapidly changing and difficult conditions. However, other Kerr County officials revealed that by that time, summer camps along the overflowing Guadalupe River were already underwater. The Texas House and Senate Select Committees on Disaster Preparedness and Flooding held a hearing on the flooding, where Kerr County Judge Rob Kelly testified that they received no alerts suggesting an extreme weather event was imminent. Kelly explained that the first indication he had of the storm's severity came when he woke up to texts and calls from Chief Kidd, Sheriff Latha, and Dalton Rice. The judge acknowledged that by the time he was alerted, the flooding had already overtaken Camp Mystic, part of the hills in La Junta, and several other upriver camps. Kelly emphasized that this extreme weather event was not forecast by the National Weather Service in a timely manner. The committee members pushed back, pointing out that the National Weather Service had issued multiple flood watches and flood warnings prior to the major flood. The NWS said it sent out a forecast on July 3rd for a level 2 of 4, risk of excessive rainfall hitting the area. Many of the children who died in the flooding were at Camp Mystic, and the camp owner was also killed in the tragedy. Thomas revealed during his testimony that of the 19 camps along the river, only 6 had an emergency response plan filed with the county. Committee members questioned Kelly about why no code red alert about the evacuation was issued. Kelly explained that the code red system is an opt-in system, and many residents have not signed up for it. He acknowledged that it was too late to issue the alert by the time the flooding became apparent. Kelly also revealed that he was not in Kerr County when the flooding hit, as he was at his lake house near Austin, preparing for a family gathering. The storm stalled over the South Fork watershed of the Guadalupe River, overwhelming the watershed with over 12 inches of rain in under 6 hours. The river exceeded 220,000 cubic feet per second, rising more than 20 feet per hour during the storm. By the time flooding became visible downstream, upstream communities, including multiple youth camps, were already underwater. The first 911 call came in at 2:53 a.m. on July 4th from the River Inn, a resort far upstream on the Guadalupe from Kerrville. Sheriff Latha told the lawmakers that one of his deputies was almost swept away in the floodwaters while checking water levels in low-lying areas. Latha emphasized that his deputies had no idea, no warning, that there was going to be a major tsunami-like event on the South Fork of the Guadalupe. The deputies handled over 650 radio transmissions and more than 100 emergency calls in the first few hours of the storm, while also mobilizing fire crews and rescue teams. One dispatcher remained on the line for 24 minutes, with 2 young children whose cabin was filling up with water, staying on the line until rescue crews arrived. Kerr County officials recommended that the lawmakers help by funding a better system to alert residents of flooding, including installing sirens along the river and improving broadband and internet systems in rural areas. Kerrville Mayor Joe Herring Jr. urged the lawmakers to implement a flood warning system in place along the river by next summer. As the community continues to grieve and recover from the tragedy, the question remains, could this disaster have been prevented or mitigated with better emergency management and communication? Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who attended the hearing, said 3 people remain missing in Kerr County, including a child and a volunteer fire chief. The emotional testimony of residents who lost loved ones in the flood served as a poignant reminder of the devastating consequences of the disaster. Alicia Baker, who lost her daughter and parents in the flood, described the horrors of not knowing the fate of her loved ones for over 12 hours. She emphasized that the community needs to do better to prevent such tragedies in the future. As we reflect on this tragic event, we are compelled to ask, what can be done to improve emergency management and communication in vulnerable communities? How can we ensure that those responsible for emergency management are equipped to handle crises like this? And what role can technology play in preventing or mitigating such disasters? We invite you to share your thoughts and opinions on this matter, and to join the conversation on how we can work together to build more resilient and responsive communities. Kerr County flood disaster. Did officials follow emergency plan? In the face of a devastating flood, Kerr County's response has raised serious questions about preparedness and adherence to established emergency protocols. A 5-year-old emergency management plan, recently acquired by the Texas Tribune, reveals that officials in Kerr County and Kerrville relied on a standard disaster response framework, which they notably failed to implement when over 30 feet of floodwaters inundated the banks of the Guadalupe River on July 4th. This situation highlights a critical gap in disaster readiness that could have dire consequences for the community. Every county is required to submit an emergency management plan to the Texas Division of Emergency Management, which serves as a crucial guide for local authorities during disasters. These plans clearly outline the chain of command and assign specific responsibilities for various tasks, such as evacuations, medical assistance, sanitation, and the recovery of victims. This structure is designed to minimize confusion and prevent bureaucratic delays during emergencies. However, it remains unclear whether Kerr County and Kerrville officials actively utilized this plan during the flood crisis, as they did not respond to requests for comments. Had they done so, they would have found explicit instructions on when to enhance weather monitoring following the issuance of a flood watch, an early warning signal indicating potential danger, and guidelines on when to initiate evacuations. The plan also emphasizes that local leaders recognized flash flooding as a significant threat to both Kerrville and Kerr County. The Emergency Management Plan, dated November 2020, begins with a stark acknowledgement. Our cities of Kerrville, Ingram, and Kerr County are exposed to numerous hazards, all of which can disrupt the community, lead to casualties, and damage or destroy public and private property. Several critical elements of the plan appear to have been overlooked, including the necessity for evacuation training prior to a disaster and a straightforward 4-step protocol for increasing weather monitoring. A flood watch was issued for the area on July 3rd at 1:18 p.m., which, according to the plan, should have prompted actions such as heightened situation monitoring, reconnaissance of known trouble spots, and the deployment of warning signs. Following the issuance of a flash flood warning at approximately 1:14 a.m. on July 4th, local officials could have begun alerting the public and evacuating low-lying areas, as well as opening shelters for those displaced. The plan designates the county judge and the mayor as the primary figures responsible for guiding disaster response efforts, while the emergency management coordinator or city manager is tasked with overseeing the overall response. Unfortunately, city officials had to take charge initially because the top 3 county officials were unavailable when the flooding began. Testimony from a legislative hearing revealed that both Kerr County Sheriff Larry Letha and William Dub Thomas, the county's emergency management director, were asleep when the floodwaters began to surge into homes and Camp Mystic, leading to over 100 fatalities. On the day of the flooding, Kerr County Judge Bob Kelly was out of town. Local officials expressed to lawmakers that they received minimal warning about the flood, which arrived too swiftly for an effective response. Thomas conceded to State Senator Charles Perry, a Republican from Lubbock, that Kerr County and Kerrville first responders had never conducted a comprehensive county-wide evacuation drill. "We have not done a full-scale evacuation exercise," Thomas admitted, highlighting a significant oversight in disaster preparedness. Despite this, the 55-page emergency management plan suggests that local officials should have been better equipped to handle the situation. The Texas Division of Emergency Management provided the plan to the Tribune in response to a public records request, but Kerr County officials have not addressed a similar inquiry made earlier by the Tribune. The plan emphasizes that effective mitigation strategies such as floodplain management and fire inspections can significantly reduce disaster-related losses. It also stresses the importance of thorough emergency planning, training for emergency responders, and conducting regular emergency drills to enhance readiness for unforeseen situations. An attachment to the plan outlines 12 types of emergency management training courses, with sections designated for tracking the number of personnel needing training and those who have completed it. Alarmingly, all these sections were left blank. Additionally, a grid within the plan specifies which emergency tasks are assigned to 33 employees from Kerr County and Kerrville, categorized by initials, indicating their level of responsibility. P for primary, S for support, and C for coordination. According to this grid, the Kerr County Sheriff was primarily responsible for alerting residents about the emergency, while the Kerrville Mayor, Fire Chief, Police Chief, County Judge, Emergency Management Director, Justice of the Peace, and constables were assigned supporting roles. Evacuation responsibilities were meant to be coordinated by the County Emergency Management Director, with the Kerrville Police Chief taking a leading role. The plan warns, it is possible for a major disaster to occur at any time and at any place. Some emergency situations occur with little or no warning. As the Texas Tribune Festival approaches, featuring prominent figures such as comedian John Mulaney and U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar, it serves as a reminder of the importance of preparedness and community resilience in the face of disasters. Are we truly ready for the next emergency? What steps can we take to ensure that our local officials are held accountable for their preparedness? Share your thoughts in the comments below.